Danny was sitting on the couch, watching TV. He lost interest in the show for a moment and took a look at himself. His clothes were baggy, a stained gray t-shirt and black sweatpants, and his hair and beard were both grown out and shaggy. Danny had once been very handsome and in great shape, but spending 3 months in isolation had taken their toll. I really do look like shit, Danny said. He looked over at the man sitting next to him, his new friend, Chuck. Chuck was around 40-ish. He'd never really mentioned it, and Danny hadn't asked. He was dressed quite similarly to Danny, himself wearing a dingy tank top and blue sweatpants with orange foam rubber sandals. Chuck scratched his thick and graying beard.
"Oh, I don't know, mate,"
Chuck said.
"Good haircut and a shave will do you right up, cunt."
Chuck lifted his leg and farted loud, then laughed and began waving his hand in front of his nose.
"Oh, fuck, mate. You're going to want to make some distance from that one."
Danny jumped up and ran out the front door.
"Jesus, Chuck, you could have warned me,"
Danny said as he pulled a cigarette from his pack.
"A warning after the fact is still a warning, mate,"
Chuck replied from inside. Danny heard the couch creak as Chuck got up and began making his way outside as well. Danny got a second cigarette from his pack, handing it to Chuck as the old hobo brushed past him. Danny lit his cigarette and then Chuck's. Both men sat in silence for a minute until Danny's phone started ringing. He took it out and looked at the screen. It was a number he didn't have saved in his phone, but he answered anyway. Hello?" Danny said.
"Danny?"
A woman's voice said on the other line.
"Is that you?"
Danny took the phone from his ear and squinted curiously at the screen. Yeah. Who is this?"
"Oh, sorry. I got a new number recently. It's Becky. We met a few months ago at the Cage the Elephant show. We worked together for a while, but we never really spoke,"
the voice said. Danny's heart skipped a beat. This was odd. "Oh, hey, Becky," Danny said, unsure of what else to say. He wasn't very good at small talk. "How you been?" His throat was suddenly very dry.
"I've been great, thanks for asking."
Danny could tell Becky was practically beaming by the tone of her voice.
"So, I know this is way out of the blue, but there's another show in a couple weeks. A Day to Remember. I know it's a little old now, but I was wondering if maybe you'd want to go."
"They're not that old," Danny said. Then he thought about it for a second. "Shit, you're right. I was listening to them like 15 years ago." Becky laughed.
"Yeah, looks like time has flown. Anyways, what do you say?"
Becky's tone seemed almost hopeful. Danny stuttered and stammered. Chuck flicked him in the testicles.
"Fuck, mate, just say yes!"
he whisper-screamed at Danny.
Yeah!"
Danny exclaimed as he winced and grabbed his aching manhood, shooting a dirty look at Chuck. "Sounds great. Just send me text of the details." His heart was beating hard in his chest.
"Okay, awesome,"
Becky said.
"I'll send you a message. It's gonna be great to see you. Looking forward to it. Bye."
She hung up. Danny stood there and noticed his cigarette had burned all the way to the filter, forgotten. He looked at the phone in his hand in confusion, and then to Chuck.
"What the fuck, Chuck?"
he said.
"Oh, mate, looks like you just got asked out on a date."
Chuck grunted as he stood up.
"You're gonna want to get your shit together if you want this to go well."
He turned to walk inside. Danny was shocked out of his reverie. "Wait, what do you mean?" Danny said as he took out another cigarette.
"Look, all I'm saying is you could use a bit of a makeover and some cash to get it done. Need a ticket anyhow, and a gentleman will ride the ladies as well,"
Chuck said. Danny took out his wallet and looked inside. $47 and some faded receipts was all that greeted him, besides his license. He hated looking at that picture of him. He used to look and feel so good before. His phone chimed. He got a text from Becky about the show. He took a drag on his cigarette and pondered how he'd make the money. Before he could think very long, his phone chimed again with another message. It was his sister, Tara. The message read, "Hey, dickwad. Nobody's heard from you in months and you haven't posted anything. Are you fucking dead or not? Call me!" Danny hit the call button, and the phone hadn't rung twice before Tara answered. "Danny, I swear to God, you can't just drop off the face of the earth like that," she half yelled in Danny's ear. Danny let the silence hang for a moment. He sighed before speaking. "I'm here, just haven't wanted to go out for a while. Didn't see the point." "Danny," Tara began. Her tone had softened noticeably. "I know what that bitch did was terrible. I can't imagine." Tara took a deep, audible breath. "But you can't let that keep you from living your life. You've got people who care about you." Danny felt a spike in his heart, and tears began to well up in his eyes. "I know," he said. "But hey, guess what?" Danny was excited to tell someone about Becky. "What?" Tara asked inquisitively. "I've got a date," Danny said with a proud grin. "No way. Who?" Tara's voice was full of shock and excitement. Danny told her about the conversation, how Becky randomly called him and asked him to a show. Tara snorted. "Well, you could use some company," she said. "Well, I've had company for a couple of weeks," Danny replied. "Oh yeah? Who?" Danny heard suspicion in Tara's voice. "Some random guy who showed up on my doorstep a little while back. I went outside to smoke and he was just sleeping there on my porch. I think he's Australian. Anyways, his name's Chuck." Danny knew it would come off strange to Tara, but he didn't care too much. "Ugh, what the fuck, Danny? Some random guy?" Tara said. "He's cool, Tara. Chillax. He just seemed like he needed a place to rest," Danny said, trying to soothe the moment. "Whatever," Tara huffed. "I'm coming over. I've got some shit I need to drop off to you. I'll be there in 15. Tara hung up before Danny could say anything. Danny finished his cigarette and walked inside, taking a look at the living room. It was littered with empty chip bags, soda bottles, and beer cans. Danny huffed and went to the kitchen to grab a trash bag. He returned and began to pick up the trash. "Well, expecting some company?" Chuck asked. "Yeah, my sister," Danny said. "She'll be here in a few. Figured I'd clean up the house before she got here and chewed my head off about letting our parents' home fall to ruin." A few minutes later, Danny heard Tara pull up. He stepped outside and saw her get out of her black pickup, a mid-2000s Toyota, and run towards him. She nearly tackled him, giving him a hug. "Don't fucking scare me like that," Tara yelled and hit Danny in the arm. "Who the hell am I going to have if you leave?" Danny felt a sting of guilt. "Do you want something to drink?" Danny asked. Tara stretched her hands over her head. "Yeah, but first help me get this junk out of the bed of my truck," she said. "So you're just dumping trash in my yard?" Danny poked at her. Tara looked at him with that look of exasperation that only sisters can give. "Shut the fuck up, Danny, and come help me. You need it anyway." Danny chuckled and went with Tara. Arriving at the pickup, he saw that there was a push mower and a couple of boxes. "Thanks for the mower, but what's in the boxes?" Danny asked. Tara blew a strand of hair away from her face. "Just some clothes my ex left laying around. You're about the same size, so I figured what the hell." Danny got the lawnmower out and grabbed both boxes, heading towards his front door. He sat both boxes down by the couch and waved at Chuck, who was sitting there, going to the kitchen to grab a soda for the three of them. He came back into the living room, and Tara was sitting on the floor next to the door, smoking her own cigarette. Danny handed her a soda and tossed one to Chuck before sitting on the couch and opening his own. Tara sipped her drink and spoke. "So where's this fucking Australian hobo?" she sniffed. Danny looked over at Chuck, who shrugged. He's right here, Tara," Danny said, pointing to Chuck. Tara looked around the room and then back at Danny before giving him a suspicious look.
Whatever, Danny, she said. Cut the fucking grass before you get a ticket. I love you, asshole.
Tara stood and gave Danny a hug.
And take a damn shower,
she said, leaving out of the door and getting in her truck before driving off. Danny looked over at Chuck, confused. What the hell was that about? Danny asked. Chuck raised one eyebrow and then shrugged.
Beats me, cunt. Awful strange, innit?
He took a sip of his soda and burped. Danny shook his head. What a strange day he was having. Then an idea hit him.
Wait,
he exclaimed, standing up quickly. I'll mow grass for some money. He turned to look at Chuck. Let's go grab some food and I'll get some gas. Chuck grunted as he stood.
Lead the way, Captain,
he said, following Danny out to his white 2016 Honda Accord. Both men climbed in the car, Danny behind the wheel, and took off towards Walmart. It was a quick drive, only a few minutes across the suburb. Danny pulled into the McDonald's next to the Walmart and parked. He and Chuck got out and went inside.
Just get me what you getting, Mike. I'm gonna have a sit down,
Chuck said as he walked over to a booth and plopped down. The restaurant was busy, and this made Danny uneasy. He knew he looked terrible, and he hadn't really gone outside at all for 3 months. Ever since she... Order when you're ready, sir, the cashier said, snapping Danny out of it. Oh, Danny began. I'll have 2 number 1s, please. He paid, waited up front for a couple of minutes before the food was ready, and then walked to sit next to Chuck.
Oh, lovely, mate, just lovely, thank you kindly,
Chuck said as Danny handed him the food.
Shall we pray, mate?
Danny winced. I don't know, he said, unsure.
Come on, chap,
Chuck said, and gently poked Danny on the arm.
No use in counting the big eye out just 'cause your luck's run sour. What do you say?
Danny looked at the middle-aged hobo. Fine, he said, and then began a prayer his father had taught him long ago as a boy. I am grateful for my life. I am grateful for my existence. I am grateful for the sun, the moon, the stars, and the sky. I am grateful for the dirt, the trees, the birds, the bugs, and the beasts. I am grateful for the animals that gave their lives so that my body may live. I am grateful for the chance to share this. I am grateful for the strength to carry out my destiny. Thank you. Danny finished, and he noticed a few people nearby were looking at him.
Oh, amen, cunt, amen,
Chuck said, and Danny laughed at the irreverence of it. Danny had just taken a bite of his burger when a little old lady, looking to be in her 80s, approached. She came near with a look of admiration in her eyes.
Young man,
she said,
that was a beautiful prayer. Who taught that to you?
Danny looked at the old woman. She was small, frail, but bubbling with some sort of radiance. He stuttered and coughed. My father did. My friend here asked that I say it, but I don't do that very much anymore, Danny said as he gestured to Chuck. The woman looked in Chuck's direction with confusion and then back to Danny.
I'm sorry, friend?
Her smile was concerned. Danny looked at Chuck with some alarm. Chuck furrowed his brow and cleared his throat, which the old woman didn't seem to notice.
Well,
she began and leaned in, looking conspiratorial, and whispered,
Don't worry. I see angels too.
She winked and carried on out the door. I am getting seriously weirded out, man, Danny said to Chuck. Chuck took a bite of his burger and talked through a half-full mouth.
Give you a bad break, huh? She was harmless enough.
The 2 men finished their burgers and got ready to leave. They went to Danny's car and got in, driving to the gas pumps by Walmart. Danny and Chuck got out of the car, and Danny went to pay for $15 worth of gas. When he was done, he got the red gas can from his trunk and began to fill it up. He couldn't stop thinking about how weird Tara and an old lady were about Chuck. Whatever, he thought to himself. Chuck called out,
Oi, go take a leak.
All right, I'll be here, Danny replied. He looked up and noticed that Chuck was standing in the middle of the road on his phone, not noticing the car that was barreling towards him. Danny dropped the gas nozzle and yelled at Chuck, "Chuck! Watch out!" The hobo looked up at him, but it was too late. The car was right upon him, and Danny covered his eyes with his arms, unable to watch. After a few moments, he didn't hear any screeching or screams, nothing to suggest his new friend had been made into hobo road paste. In fact, when he looked, Chuck was nowhere to be found. No blood, no stopped car. Danny began to panic and called out for Chuck. "Chuck! Chuck! Chuck!" He began to hyperventilate and panic. From behind him, in the car, he heard a familiar, raspy voice. "Get in the car, mate, or you're gonna get picked up for acting all crazy." It was Chuck, sitting in the passenger seat. "What the fuck, Chuck? What the fuck is going on?" Danny yelled, waving his arms in the air. He suddenly became aware that people were staring at him and decided to get his gas tank, put it in the car, get in, and drive off. Danny looked over at Chuck, then back at the road. He felt himself starting to have a panic attack. "I was on the road, mate. Safety fast," Chuck said, winking at Danny. The two arrived back at the house, and Danny immediately ran to the bathroom and began to vomit. His nerves were shot, and he knew something was very wrong with him. He finished, closed his eyes, and waited until the world stopped spinning. Then finally walked to the living room where Chuck had resumed his place on the couch. Danny stood on the other side of the room, staring warily at Chuck. "Feeling better, cunt?" Chuck asked. Danny's breath began heaving, and he began sweating. He broke his silence. "Are you fucking real, Chuck? Are you fucking real?" Danny asked, and pointed accusingly at his friend. "Course I'm not fucking real, mate. Why else did you think nobody could see me?" Chuck let out a loud laugh. "What the fuck? What the fuck?" Danny began to hyperventilate again. "Oh my God, I've gone insane." 3 months of isolation will do that to you, mate," Chuck said. Danny's eyes were wide and bulging as he looked frantically around the room, trying to focus on anything but Chuck. He looked directly at his imaginary friend and let out a high-pitched scream. "Ah! Where the hell did you come from?" Danny demanded. "War from inside your noggin, lad," Chuck said, tapping his own head. "I reckon you were so lonely your brain just made you a friend." "Oh, no, God, no," Danny murmured as he dropped to his knees. Chuck got off the couch and walked over to Danny and knelt beside him. There, cunt. No need to fret," Chuck said in an effort to reassure Danny. "What do you mean?" Danny began sobbing, terribly afraid. "Oh, I'm a fucking psycho. I'm fucking nuts." He broke down. Chuck tapped Danny's shoulder. "Listen, mate. What say you get the lawn mowed and see how you feel?" Danny looked up, but Chuck had disappeared. Danny wiped his eyes and looked around. The room was empty once again but for himself. He'd heard of people seeing things and then they'd just go away once the person knew they weren't real. "Chuck?" he called out, just to make sure. No response. He figured that whatever was wrong with him must be getting better by now. He thought to himself how much he'd miss Chuck, even if the guy wasn't real. Still good company, Danny thought to himself. Danny stood up. "Screw it," he said, and went out the front door to get the gas tank from the trunk of his car. He filled up the gas tank on the mower and pulled the string where it started right up. The yard wasn't too big, a half-acre or so, but after so many months of inactivity, Danny's muscles were screaming at him in atrophic protest. He had to stop and take breaks, but after around an hour, he was finished. Danny was soaked in sweat and filthy from his labor, but a familiar sense of accomplishment dawned on him. He went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and headed to the front door, took a cigarette out of his pack. Danny opened the beer and lit the cigarette, taking a big, satisfying draw. He looked at the yard and thought to himself, things might be just turning around.
Yeah, but you still got a mop on your head, cunt,
A gruff voice said out of nowhere behind him.
Ah! Holy shit!
Danny screamed, flailing his arms involuntarily and spilling his beer all over himself. He looked beside him and saw that Chuck had reappeared and was sitting down.
Fancy a smoke, mate?
Chuck asked and extended his hand. Danny stared in disbelief with an indignant look on his face.
I thought you were gone!
Danny yelled. Chuck gestured with his hand to lower the volume.
Keep your voice down, mate. I was only having a piss.
Danny slid down and sat on his bottom. He was in shock. So, now what? Danny asked.
Now, Chuck began, you get your shit together and you move on from that traitorous bitch.
Danny flinched. How did you know about that? I never told you. Chuck tapped his brow.
Oh, I'm in your head, mate. I know it 'cause you know it. Don't fucking overthink it, mate.
Danny shook his head, looked up again at the yard, and felt the welcome fatigue of his muscles, and thought about the date he had coming up. Even if I am insane, I am getting things done, he thought to himself, privately.
Right you are, mate, right you are.
Danny yelled.
Ah!
Geez, would you mind not doing that? He asked, feeling a bit violated.
Sorry, lad,
Chuck apologized.
Anyway, seems like I'm here to stay until you got your head on right.
He reached over and pulled on Danny's whiskers, which Danny surprisingly felt.
Don't overthink it, mate. Why not start with a shave?
Chuck said. Danny shrugged and then nodded. He finished the rest of his now flat beer, standing and turning to go to the bathroom. He undressed and looked at his body in the mirror. He was still quite well built, cuts in all the right places, but deflated, like someone who used to be in shape. He got into the shower and cleaned off his body, feeling the heat relax his aching flesh. When he was finished, Danny got out of the shower and wiped the steam away from the mirror. He looked in the cabinet and found his razor. Lathering his face with shaving cream, he began to make his face bald once more. Looking at his smooth skin, he hardly recognized himself. He looked like the man he used to be, except for the hair, but he didn't feel like that very same man. Guess you can't go back, he said to himself. Danny went to the living room and found Chuck sitting, watching TV.
Gonna wash the tally with the sled?
Chuck asked, gesturing to the television with the remote in his hand. Danny yawned and stretched. No, he said. I'm pretty tired. Besides, I gotta get up at a decent time tomorrow.
That's so good, man,
Chuck said with a grin as he turned off the TV.
Night, mate.
Danny yawned again. Night, Chuck, he said as he went into the bedroom and crawled under the covers, setting an alarm for 9 a.m. before he fell off to sleep. Danny woke up to his alarm, stumbled out of bed, and went to the kitchen to make himself a cup of instant coffee. Passing through the living room, he saw Chuck sleeping on the couch, facing away. He paused, reminding himself that Chuck was imaginary, and his mind began to race. Don't overthink it, he said to himself, and Chuck raised a thumb up into the air. Danny huffed and continued to the kitchen. After making his coffee, Danny got dressed and headed out the door.
All right, mate, Chuck said. What's it doing?
I'm gonna go drive around and look for unmowed lawns. Quicker than job applications. I'll be back, Danny said as he loaded the mower into his trunk and drove down the road. It wasn't a few minutes before he saw a very overgrown yard. Stopping and going to knock on the door, it was answered by the very same old lady that had talked to him at McDonald's after his prayer. Hi, Danny began. I didn't know.
Oh, it's you,
The old lady said gleefully.
I never did introduce myself. I'm Dora.
She took Danny's hand. Hi, Dora. I'm Danny, he said. He looked around at the yard. Anyways, I was wondering if I could mow your yard for half what you usually charge. Dora raised her eyebrows and put her finger to her chin.
Oh, I don't even know what to charge. My nephew used to come do it for me. What do you think is fair?
Danny shrugged and ran his fingers through his hair. I guess let me get it done and it'll be half of whatever you feel like paying me. How's that sound? Dora smiled and clapped her hands. Danny thought it was adorable.
I think that sounds great,
she said. Danny got started mowing the lawn. His muscles were still a bit sore from yesterday, but he felt them unlocking and falling back into their old endurance. After 45 minutes, the yard was mowed in nice lines. Danny went to the door, expecting to be paid around $50, which was fine with him. When Dora answered the door and stepped outside, she looked around at her yard with wide eyes and a grin.
Oh, it looks wonderful,
she said. Dora then handed Danny a white envelope with what he assumed to be cash inside. Thank you, miss, he began, but as he opened the envelope, he saw there was $200 inside. I can't take all this, Miss Dora, he said, handing the envelope back to her. Dora pushed the envelope back at him. She looked at him with a twinkle in her eye.
I looked up how much it would be to push mow my lawn these days. Almost $400. You said half, so here you go,
she giggled. Danny was astounded. He already had all the money he needed for the show. Things were definitely looking up. Dora gave Danny a hug and asked if he could mow for her once a week, $300 so she didn't feel like she was cheating him. Danny agreed happily and got into his car, driving away. Damn, I could make some decent money this way, Danny thought to himself. Chuck suddenly appeared in the passenger seat, flailing his arms wildly and yelling, What do you fucking know, mate? Ah! Oh, Jesus Christ! Danny screamed and swerved into the next lane, narrowly avoiding an oncoming car and getting back into his own lane. What the fuck is wrong with you? Danny yelled at Chuck. Chuck laughed from the pit of his belly. You should have seen your fucking face, cunt! You could have killed me! Danny screamed back. Nah, mate, no. I knew you were a good driver. Anyways, pull in here, Chuck said, pointing at a strip mall. Danny did, and took a deep breath. Once he had, he looked around and noticed that they were parked in front of a barber shop. He gave Chuck a slow glance. You know, you could have waited until I was done driving, Danny said. Chuck pointed to the barber shop. Get in there and make yourself presentable, mate. You look like a great sweaty dog. Danny went in and was seated shortly. He got a nice, close cut. Nothing fancy. But when he looked in the mirror, he found that he was staring at his old self, even feeling a bit like it. When he got out to the car, he noticed Chuck was nowhere to be found. He decided to load some money onto his card and buy the tickets online. When it was done, he sent a picture of the receipt with an email of Becky's ticket to her. Just a couple of minutes later, he got a reply. It read,
OMG, that's awesome! Sorry, so super busy this week. But you think maybe we could have a phone call in a couple days? Gotta go, but let me know.
Danny found that he was grinning ear to ear and that his heart was fluttering. He drove home to tell Chuck, who was laying on the couch, the news. After not too long, Danny got in the shower, shaved again, and headed to bed, setting his alarm for 9 a.m. The next 3 days passed in a similar manner. Danny would wake up, but in the mornings he would send a message to Becky and get a reply around noon. He'd drive around all morning, looking for overgrown yards, asking to mow them. He averaged 4 or 5 lawns a day, each around $200 to $250. Danny had even found another repeat customer. The week was at an end, and Danny was winding down on the couch with a beer next to Chuck. Chuck looked over at him. Someone's looking vital and satisfied. How'd you make out, lad? Danny took out his bulging wallet and looked inside. He whistled. "About 2.5 grand," he said in amazement. Before Chuck could say anything else, Danny's phone started ringing. It was Becky. Danny got up excitedly and went out the front door before answering.
Hey, Becky.
He could tell he sounded overeager, but he didn't care.
Hey, Danny,
Becky replied with the same bubbly tone she always had.
What a week. Sorry I've been so short with my messages and it took me so long to call. I've been really busy working on some grant work and getting ready to go on sabbatical.
That's right, Danny said as he remembered. You teach over at the philosophy department, don't you?
Yeah,
Becky said, then paused.
Some of the other professors still ask about you. When you left the university, nobody knew what happened to you.
Danny held his silence for a moment. Yeah, well, he stumbled over his words. Things just got complicated. Becky sighed.
I heard. Do you want to talk about it?
Danny heard Chuck clear his throat and was standing over him in the doorway with a look that said, "Die, you want to fucking talk about it?" My wife, ex-wife, Danny began. Turns out she'd been sleeping around with a few of my colleagues. For a couple years, I guess. The pit of Danny's stomach ached. I always wanted kids, and when she finally got pregnant, I was ecstatic. Danny paused and gulped.
Danny, are you okay?
Becky asked.
You don't have to go on.
Danny cleared his throat. No, it's fine. I need to talk about it. He continued. When the baby was delivered, it looked nothing like me. I didn't need a paternity test to know, but we got one anyways. Turns out it was my friend Toby. He taught literature next door to me.
Damn, Danny. I'm so sorry.
Becky's words were comforting to Danny. Danny said, trying to sound nonchalant. My sister would say I dodged a bullet. I'd say I wasted 7 years. Gotta move on, though, right? Don't overthink it. Danny looked up at Chuck when he spoke this last bit, who gave an exaggerated wink and thumbs up to Danny in return.
Right?
Becky said, her upbeat energy returning.
Sorry for your loss, but it was her waste.
Becky got quiet, and when she spoke, her tone was secretive.
Can I admit something to you, Danny?
Danny was intrigued. Sure, Becky, he replied. Becky giggled.
Well, to be honest, I have been super into you since I got on with the university 4 years ago, she said.
Danny was dumbstruck. Are you serious? He asked.
Duh, but you were married,
Becky said, and her tone became a little harder, more angry.
When I found out what she'd done, I was beside myself. I couldn't believe she'd taken a man like you for granted.
Danny was blushing as he spoke. I'm not that special. Becky and Danny continued to talk for nearly an hour. They discussed their favorite books, movies, and since he used to be a literature professor himself, they bonded over common knowledge of the campus.
Ah, dang,
Becky said after a while.
I have to get some sleep, but message me tomorrow and I'll try to call again soon, okay?
Absolutely. It was great talking to you, Becky, Danny blurted out.
Same. Can't wait to see you next weekend. Bye.
And with that, Becky hung up. Danny stood up, and Chuck spoke, saying, "Get her done, cunt! Get her done!" Danny high-fived his imaginary Australian hobo friend and went to get in the shower. When he got out, Danny saw a message on his phone. It was from Becky. He opened it. When he saw the picture, he nearly dropped his phone. It was a full frontal nude picture from Becky, with attached text that said, "I don't cheat. See you next weekend," with a wink emoji. Danny decided to return the favor. It was awkward. He was a man in his mid-30s, not having done this since he was a teenager. But he figured it would be fun. He snapped a picture, sent it with a kiss emoji, and headed off to bed. On the way, he passed through the living room and didn't see Chuck on the couch. He stopped and looked around for a second. Just then, Chuck appeared behind him and let out a big "Boo! Ah! Mother shit!" Danny screamed, startled. Chuck cackled to himself and walked to the couch.
Never gets old, mate, never gets old. Good night.
Danny huffed. Night, Chuck. The weekend passed rather uneventfully. He and Becky had talked again the next night, and his sister Tara stopped over to watch a movie. The entire time, Chuck was beside her, making faces she couldn't see. It made Danny's brain hurt, but it was also hilarious. The beginning of the week was quite calm as well, now that Danny had begun to find a rhythm. He mowed Dora's lawn on Monday, as well as a few others. On Tuesday, he mowed his other repeat customer, a single young mother named Alice, and another few also. Wednesday proved to be the anomaly. By 9 o'clock that morning, Danny was already up and dressed when there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find his college's dean, Samuel Winchester. He was a portly man, mid-50s, with a smart mustache and a shiny bald head, usually hidden under a bowler hat that he was fidgeting with in his hands currently. His suit and vest were bulging across his belly.
"Oh, good morning, Daniel," Dean Winchester said. "I was wondering if I might have a word with you."
Danny looked at the man for a brief moment. "Please, come in," he finally said. Dean Winchester walked inside and sat on the couch next to Chuck, whom he could not see. Danny took his seat as well.
"Daniel,"
the dean began, fumbling with his hat.
"Daniel, I don't quite know where to begin."
He looked at Daniel earnestly.
"You still have tenure, you know,"
he said with a grin. Danny made to stand, but the dean called out to him.
"Daniel, please! It's a terrible tragedy what's happened to you, and all responsible parties who can be reprimanded have been."
Dean Winchester was pleading to Danny. Danny sat back on the couch, but could not look at either of the men, neither the fat one nor the imaginary one.
"Your students need you, Daniel. Before your father passed."
But Danny interrupted the dean. "I don't want to talk about my father," Danny said.
"Well, perhaps someone should,"
the dean said, causing Danny to look at him. The man had a determined demeanor now.
"He would tell you that you've had your cry, and if you want your hug, you'd better get back to work."
As soon as the words left Dean Winchester's mouth, he seemed to deflate, unsure of himself. Danny looked at Chuck, who was nodding very slowly, with his eyes wide and his mouth open. "Fine," Danny relented. The dean jumped up with joy and hugged Danny tight before resuming a stern professional bearing.
"I expect to see you in your office Monday morning,"
the dean said, standing up and walking to the door. "I'll see you Monday, Dean Winchester," Danny said. "Drive safe." Danny turned around to go sit on the couch, but noticed Chuck was gone. He turned around quickly to make sure Chuck wasn't about to scare him, but nothing. He called out,
"Chuck, if you jump out and scare me, I'm going to be pissed."
No reply. Danny noticed that a certain feeling, one that had been with him for a few weeks since Chuck showed up, was gone. He carried on with the rest of his day, trying to absorb everything that had transpired recently. "Don't overthink it," he said to himself, half expecting Chuck to appear out of thin air and frighten him. Danny mowed a couple lawns just to keep himself busy, and spent the night alone, for the first time in a while, except this time, he didn't want to be alone. He drank some beer, watched some TV, then showered and went to bed. Tomorrow was the big day, finally getting to see Becky. He awoke early the next morning and sent Becky a text, telling her good morning and how excited he was for the night. He'd hardly gotten out of bed when she sent a reply saying much the same with a picture of her smiling face, which made Danny smile. He got out of bed and walked into the living room, but nobody was there. No imaginary Australian hobo taking up his couch. Danny supposed there never was, but oh well. Danny went to get a haircut and a new set of clothes. Just some polos and shorts, but something nice and new for tonight. Night fell, and it was almost time for the show. Danny got a text from Becky saying she'd meet him near the ticket gate. He drove to the venue and parked, walking to their rendezvous point. When Danny saw her, his heart stopped. Becky was gorgeous, shining so bright, even in the twilight. She was unmistakable in the crowd, and so he drifted towards her. He waved, and Becky saw him, hopping over the railing next to her and giving him a big hug.
Danny! Oh my God, I cannot tell you how long I've been waiting for this.
Becky looked Danny up and down and gave him a wink.
You sure look handsome.
Danny blushed. Thanks, Becky. You look... wow. Becky giggled and took his hand as they walked to the ticket gate. Danny pulled out his phone so the barcode from his email could be scanned for his ticket. As it was, he heard a gruff voice speak to him.
There's your ticket, mate. Have a great time.
Danny looked up and saw that Chuck was sitting there at the ticket gate, wearing a uniform that was a gold polo with angel wings on the breast. He was stunned, but not as stunned as when Becky talked next.
Oh, wow,
she said.
I love your accent. Is that Aussie?
Danny felt as if he'd been punched in the gut.
Get on in and enjoy the show, mate. Don't overthink it,
Chuck said, winking at Danny. Danny smiled and nodded, walking into the concert with his date by his side.